Thanksgiving weekend brings with it a big game as Penn State takes on Michigan State at Beaver Stadium. Michigan State comes in with a record of 10-1. They're 6-1 in the Big Ten, tied for first, looking for their first conference title since 1990. The Nittany Lions have won 4 of their last 5, and they're trying to send out 11 seniors as winners in their final game at home. It's Penn State and Michigan State, and we'll preview it for you next on Huddle Up, Nittany Lion fans.
Presentation of Huddle Up Nittany Lion fans on your local public television station has been made possible in part by Everett Cash Mutual Insurance Company, providing insurance for farmers by farmers since 1913. ECM Insurance Group of Everett.
McClanahan's Penn State Room, offering a complete assortment of Penn State gifts and apparel. Downtown State College or online anytime at PennStateRoom.com.
Inspirations, Milroy, Pennsylvania, featuring Penn State Corian tables and house signs. Information at 717-667-6314.
Hi again, everyone. I'm Steve Jones, and welcome to Huddle Up, Nittany Lion fans. The Nittany Lions are now 7-4 on the season, 4-3 in the Big Ten, after going to FedEx Field in Landover and beating Indiana last Saturday, 41-24. And in our news and notes segment, let's go to the highlights. Penn State and Indiana at FedEx. We start out in the first quarter. Penn State on an 87-yard drive. Matt McGloin to Brett Brackett, breaking tackles, and Penn State in great shape to set up Evan Royster's 5th rushing touchdown of the year. The Nittany Lions capped the drive 87 yards. They come right back. Davon Smith out of Maryland awaits this pass, and he makes the big play, 45 yards. They move to the second quarter. First play of the second quarter, Brett Brackett with the touchdown catch. 14-0 Nittany Lions. They cap a 99-yard drive. But Indiana comes back with a big play of their own. Tandon Doss with the big catch down the sideline from Ben Chappell. Indiana's back in the ballgame. Chappell then back to pass again. Terrence Turner in the far corner on the fade. Indiana gets on the board. Penn State, though, went to the trickery. Derek Moy on the reverse. 2 reverses on the day, the first 2 carries of his Penn State career to set up another Nittany Lion touchdown. In fact, it's McGloin finding Moy in the end zone. 13th career touchdown catch for Derek Moy, and the Nittany Lions up again. Quickly, back comes Indiana. Touchdown pass to Tandon Doss. They move and tie the football game up until Andrew Daly blocks the punt, the 3rd punt block that Indiana's given up this year. Jamie Van Fleet scoops it up and runs it in for the score, and Penn State wins it by a score of 41-24. Time now for our Penn State Alumni Association Fan Pulse, courtesy of our good friends at Fight On State. And Matt McGloin, with a career-high 315 yards passing, is easily our winner of the Fan Pulse this week. Well, it's time to bring in my broadcast partner for the past 11 seasons on the Penn State Football Radio Network, Jack Ham. And let's get right to the offense, Jack, and talk about the Nittany Lions, able to generate enough of a running game at 171 yards to go McGloin's 315 yards.
Well, I think the one thing about play calling is just being aggressive on the offensive side. The coaches going out there throwing the football on first down. If you see the wide receiver uncovered with a corner on the outside, you throw that hitch out there, and Moy, who was ever out there, Justin Brown, they end up getting 5-6 yards, Brackett as well. I think the idea of you're not going to always run the football on first down, mixing it up, but it still goes back to the running game. The running game in the last 4 or 5 weeks has been solid for Penn State, and I think that's what gives McGloin a good comfort level, and that's why he was able to throw some play action downfield for big plays as well.
Okay, so that's a look at the offense. Now let's flip it over to the defense. Penn State went dime against Indiana, the first time they've actually used a dime package in a game since Florida State in the Orange Bowl at the end of the 2005 season. Did you like the multiple looks out of the dime that Penn State gave Indiana?
Well, I think in that dime package, Hodges is just a key player. And number one, he's so good in the coverage downfield, being the next safety, but also a good tackler as well. And he's blitzing off the edge a couple of times. He also had Stupar coming off the edge. He had Daly coming off. When you go to that 3-down lineman, the quarterback doesn't necessarily think he's going to have a lot of time to throw the football with a 3-man rush because we're bringing so many different people. I think that scheme, especially late in the third quarter and into the fourth quarter, had Chappell just a little bit off balance, a little bit off with his timing, threw a ball high with a little bit of pressure from Macero, threw it high, and Astorino gets the interception. And that's what you want, a little hesitation in the quarterback in that pocket. We got that, especially in the fourth quarter, and those were big plays.
Well, let's go to special teams now, because Penn State put a lot of emphasis from day one of spring practice all the way through on special teams. Losing Anthony Ferris certainly was big, 39% touchbacks and what he'd been doing as a punter. But they got a punt block in this game. Overall, what have you seen from special teams?
Well, I think it's been spotty. You're right about the fact anytime you get a touchdown off a special team, and that game was tied at that point, and all of a sudden the momentum, we take the lead, you get a cheap touchdown like that, and all of a sudden now Penn State really takes control of the game. Kickoff returns have been good early in the year, and then about the last 2 or 3 weeks it has not been good. We've had to start drives deep in our own territory, and 2 of our first drives. One was an 87-yard drive and a 99-yard drive, but we got to do a better job on kickoff returns. I thought when Silas Red in there gave us a little bit of jump start on kickoff returns as well, because you can really help your offense with a good kickoff return, and you get good field position. So overall for special teams, I think it's been spotty. Wagner has been outstanding, but we do got to get more out of our kickoff return.
All right, let's get now to Michigan State. 10-1 in the year, tied with Ohio State and Wisconsin for first place in the conference at 6-1. Here's a team that had to rally to beat Purdue, needed to use a fake punt to rally and beat Northwestern, had to use a fake field goal late to beat Notre Dame in overtime. Is this a team that really has had a magical run?
Well, I think it may be a magical year. I think, number one, they're winning close games. Obviously, last week against Purdue, and that was a shootout, 35-31. But at Northwestern earlier with 35-27, and then when they played Notre Dame about the third or fourth game of the year on a fake field goal for a touchdown. So, they're aggressive and making big plays. Their secondary has been outstanding with 16 interceptions. So they're finding ways to win football games. I mean, Purdue, normally you think they would have probably dominated, but they left Purdue in the game. Purdue had a lead last week. But somehow, some way, they have a lot of faith in Cousins. He brings that team back and end up winning a close football game. I think if we win close football game, yeah, there's a little bit of luck involved, I think, like that. But I think for the most part, they're not afraid to be down in the fourth quarter, and the way they came back with 22 points last week.
All right, not only that, here's a team that's forced 7 takeaways in the red zone defensively this year. Jack, as always, thanks so much. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter at HuddleUpLines. Senior day for the Nittany Lion football team. It's not going to take very long. It's a very small senior class. Remember, this is a football team that has 59 freshmen and sophomores on it, but the seniors run through the tunnel for the final time in their respective careers against Michigan State on Saturday at high noon. Head coach Joe Paterno. Well, it didn't take long. The very first question out of the box, do you intend to return for the 2011 season?
Do you plan to return as coach next season?
Oh, I thought you said retire. Yeah, why? You got something I don't know? No, I have, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's, we've struggled a little bit this year with the youth and with the injuries and the whole bit, and I think we're not where I would like us to be yet, but I think with a good spring and a preseason practice, we could be a pretty good football team next year, and I'd like to be part of it. Hey, a couple of things, let me, just before we get into a thing, one of the reasons that I feel good about the football team is Jeff just handed me something where Penn State again leads the nation with 3 first-team ESPN academic All-Americans, which I think is great. And, part of the goals we set out for these kids when they come in is to do a good job academically, and it's always great to have a couple of kids stand out, as these 3 kids are, Wisniewski and Mazzero and Colasani, all of whom good, solid people. And the other thing is the cooperation we get from the university. we were concerned with the fact that the dormitories would be closed Friday of this week, which would obviously make it tough for some kids to come back and go to the game. And when we brought it up to the university was cooperative, and they're going to open up the dorms so that if the kids want to come back and want to stay in their dormitory and want to come to the game on Saturday, they can. So it's been a good situation, and I don't see any reason to leave it right now.
Have you been in touch with Tennessee Williams? Isn't he the guy that said that nobody's ever lived or coached forever, but you might be the exception? I never heard of him until you brought him up.
No, you're talking about the author. I thought you were talking, no. Tennessee said nobody ever, he says nobody's immortal, but somehow I thought I was the exception. Why'd you get the darn thing straight? This isn't one of your columns. We're talking about being accurate.
So what do you attribute the fact that they, I don't know if they've played better than anticipated?
Well, I don't know how I can say it, how many different ways I can say it. They've had a coach and a coaching staff that made up their minds that they were going to be willing to take their lumps early, even if it meant eliminating certain people who could help them on the field that particular year. They postponed those kids from participating until they became believers, and now they're reaping the benefit of those tough decisions that they had to make. Number one. Number two, they have an outstanding quarterback. Cousins is overall probably as good a quarterback as we're going to play. He's smart. He's accurate. He doesn't give you easy passes, and they've got 2 or 3 receivers that are outstanding. And that's on the offensive side of the football. And defensively, they've become very, very aggressive. They know what they're doing, and they don't do stupid things. And you've got to block them. You got to block them every play.
We want to get our Monk because he was a great football player.
Granger's a good football player. Astorino's a football player. He really is a good football player.
It will be a tough football game for us. I think every game we play is going to be tough.
They'll play a tough football game.
Tulsa's a good football team.
Iowa's a good football team.
When you get those kinds of things happening to you, you're going to get licked.
We don't play well, we'll get licked.
Find out how you can purchase episodes of the classic TV series, Joe Paterno's TV Quarterbacks, by visiting WPSU.org/TVQB. Conference call time brought to you by our good friends at STRAUB Beer. And let's get right to the Big Ten standings because that's the story off the top. Of course, we're previewing Penn State and Michigan State, but Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Michigan State all tied for first, all at 6-1, all of them in the hunt for winning at least a share of the conference championship, with Iowa and, of course, Penn State right there as well. Now, that brings us to the Big Ten Bowl picture. The Rose Bowl, of course, gets the Big Ten champion. After that, a second Big Ten team could get a BCS bid, an at-large bid. Then the pecking order would be the Capital One picking, followed by the Outback Bowl, then the Gator Bowl gets the pick, and then it's the Insight Bowl. Now, what about Wisconsin? They play at Camp Randall against Northwestern. No Dan Persa out there for Northwestern against Wisconsin. Wisconsin's at a 10-1 year, 6-1 in conference play. The play-by-play voice for the Badgers is Matt LePay. Matt, true team championship if they win it?
I think it's been very much so, very much the definition of a team effort this season. I don't know how many, all Big Ten candidates, certainly a couple of players who are strong All-American candidates, a left tackle, Gabe Karimi, defensive end, J.J. Watt. But beyond that, I think the star power is minimal. John Clay comes to mind, but John hasn't played the last couple of games, and yet they have found ways to fill the void.
Well, let's get down to Ohio State and Michigan, all right? Ohio State has perfected the co-championship. In fact, if they were to win and Wisconsin were to win, it would be their 6th consecutive co-championship, sharing it 3 times with the team they lost to, Penn State twice and then Wisconsin. Well, what about the Michigan game? For those of us who have never been to a Michigan game before, Paul Keels, what is Michigan-Ohio State like in that stadium?
It's really different from the rest of the season. The players kind of take it up to another level. You hear former players from both schools say it's the most physical game they've ever played in. The fans are more excited about it. I don't know if it's because it's the end of the year, because of what the rivalry has meant, and usually because for one or the other, or sometimes both, a championship's at stake. It's just there's the rest of the season, and then there's the Michigan game. That's maybe really, Steve, the only way I can describe it. It just really does go up another notch in every aspect, including tailgating.
And by the way, this will be the last year of any co-championship because next year Nebraska comes in. That means there'll be a Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium. So now let's get a look at Nebraska. They take on Colorado in their final regular season game in the history of the Big 12. Greg Sharp is the play-by-play voice of the Husker Radio Network. So what's it been like traveling around this season in the Big 12?
Well, the folks are just ecstatic. They cannot wait for next year to get here. There's been so much anticipation about jumping to the Big Ten Conference. And I think in some ways it's kind of taken off the luster of this season because people have been peaking a year ahead. But, there hasn't been a whole lot talked about that this will be the final regular season Big 12 game. There's been a lot of talk about the way the last game ended for Nebraska, which was a very difficult loss at College Station on Saturday night. But I think the fan base definitely wants to try to win their last Big 12 title as they walk out of the league.
Freeze frame time presented by State College Framing Company. Jordan Hill and Penn State stopping the running game, and Pete Massaro with a big game for the Nittany Lions now with 8 tackles for losses this year. Time once again to bring in Mark Brennan from Fight On State. Mark, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Yep.
All right, let's get to it now. Indiana, Penn State in Landover. Let's start out with the mix. 283 yards on first down for the Nittany Lions. Now, it wasn't a 1-to-1 ratio. They had 22 runs and 12 passes, but still, how'd you like the mix?
I just like the way Penn State came out on offense. And, I thought Penn State was going to have to run the ball. As it turned out, Indiana stacked a bunch of guys up to the line. Penn State took what Indiana was giving. Matt McGloin comes out super hot right off the bat and was really able to exploit the Hoosier defense. I think had he passed 50 times, he probably could have thrown for, 400, 500, however many yards. But wisely, Penn State did try to get the running game going because I think you're going to need that this weekend and in a bowl game.
Well, they had 171 yards rushing in this game, Mark. I mean, that really balanced it out just enough. I mean, all you have to do is really run it enough to make the pass game effective.
Yeah, and I'll go back to this. I've been saying it all year, Steve. I think that they've done a good job in the last few weeks finding what works, using that to open up the other element, whether it's the rushing game first against certain opponents to work the passing game or the passing game against Indiana, get the running game going. This isn't a dominating team that's going to come out and run it right down your throat every week. So I like the fact that the coaching staff is picking what works and going with it.
Now, here's the next part. Graham Zug had never carried the ball in a game before. Derek Moy had never carried the ball in a game before, yet both of them ran reverses, total 3 between them.
Well, I think one of the things that we saw against Ohio State is that the Buckeyes were kind of zeroing in on certain players running these types of plays, whether it be Davon Smith or the other wideout, Justin Brown. In this game, Penn State, again, switch things up a little bit, go to some of your veterans, and I thought they did really well. Moy especially. I didn't know he had that kind of running back ability, but if you go back, he was a running back in high school, so I guess he did.
Now, defensively for Penn State, they go to the dime package for the first time since the Orange Bowl. They had put it in earlier but had not used it. But they used it for the first time in almost 6 years, and they blitzed off of it.
Yeah, they did a lot of different things. When you're dealing with a quarterback, as good as that quarterback is, you have to do some things. I think where they got caught a little bit was when they put number 7 in. I'm like Joe. I'm not good with names. When they put the running quarterback in, that got them a little bit. And when they had Doss come around and run the ball, that got them a little bit. But eventually, we've seen it with this team again in the last few weeks outside of Ohio State. Once they figured out exactly what was going on, when the score was tied 24-24, they eventually tightened up And the thing that I really liked was the fact that they finally started coming up with the big plays. We talked about it last week. You may call the block punt a special teams play, but to me that is the defense. And then you see Drew Astorino coming up with a huge interception right after that. That kind of, I don't want to say that put the game away, but you got the real feeling there that Penn State's going to roll once he got that interception.
All right, now let's talk about the bowl picture, because the entire crew wants to know where to go. So since the crew wants to know, they want to know what you know.
I want to know where to go. And, you know, I'm thinking if Penn State wins this game, it has an opportunity to climb up into the Outback Bowl. More than likely, it'll be tied with Iowa in the standings. And if you're looking at this Penn State team and you're looking at that Iowa team, which one's more interesting now? Now, I know Joe Paterno has said he's definitely, or he intends to come back next year, but I don't know that we know that for absolute certain. And if there is some question, if you're the Outback Bowl, is it worth your while to take a shot on getting Penn State for what may be Joe's last game? Again, I don't know if it is going to be Joe's last game. He intends to come back, but I think that's something that's going to be taken into account. If Penn State loses, I'd be shocked if they don't end up in the Gator Bowl. So as difficult as things were early this season, I think the bowl situation is setting up very nicely. I think they're going to be able to get about as good as they could realistically hope for given their record.
And if Wisconsin and Ohio State both win, then I think the Big Ten's in great shape to get 2 BCS bids, and that bumps everybody up in the pecking order, as you talked about. All right, let's talk about what's at stake for Penn State. Your opinion, what's at stake?
Well, I think this is a game, you're playing a 10-1 opponent. This is a game, it's not going to necessarily make the season, but it's going to allow you to go out on a great note. Penn State's been very good in senior day, on senior day the last 10 years. I just think it's one of these things that allow you to take some great momentum into a bowl game, and I think you could carry that into the next season. We've seen that with Michigan State games in the past. 1993 was a perfect example out there. Penn State rallies to win, you know, wins a bowl game, and then goes undefeated the next year. I'm not saying Penn State's going undefeated next year, but I think it's a good way to get that momentum going into the bowl into next season.
Now, for Mark D'Antonio, it's been a trying season, and yet he has his team to the doorstep of something special. So what's at stake for the Spartans?
Well, obviously, this is a chance for Michigan State to win at least a portion of a Big Ten title. This is a team that really has gotten close to this spot in the last 10 years or so, but has never been able to get it done. The one thing I like about D'Antonio, his 4th year there, he got away from that junior college, bringing all these junior college guys. They have their senior class now has more wins over the last 4 years than any other senior class in Michigan State history. I think one of the reasons they are where they are is because he got away from going through these 1- and 2-year wonder junior college players and focused on bringing in 4-year guys.
And it's made a big difference, but they've also had the ability, Mark, to do big things that with red zone defense. They have forced 7 red zone takeaways this year, and they've won close games dramatically.
Yeah, and they've done a great job with coming back. I know there are a lot of, I mean, we're putting up the numbers right here. That's one of the real keys for Penn State. I don't want to jump ahead, but if you get a lead on this team, you better keep scoring and scoring and doing what you need to do. Michigan State has outscored opponents by a total of 72 or 73 points in the second half and overtime this year. So this is a team, veteran players on offense and defense. They're not going to be rattled if they get down. If you're Penn State and you get an early lead, which I think Penn State can do, you better keep pouring it on and pouring it on and pouring it on.
And Mark, when Penn State has the ball, what do they need to do?
I think they have to continue to be balanced, Steve. I don't get the sense they're going to be able to go in against this opponent and run the ball like crazy. Be balanced. Don't make mistakes. Matt McGloin, take what they're giving you. Hopefully the wideouts can do a better job. They actually did do a much better job against Indiana than Ohio State of getting away from the press coverage and being able to catch the ball and be physical and all those things. So I think the key is, offensively, just don't make mistakes. Take what that defense is giving you. You're going to be able to get some points early in this game because they've showed that they're really usually not that great in the first half.
All right, so Cousins, Baker, Cunningham, Dell, that group, they get the ball. What do they have to do?
In terms of Penn State, I think what Penn State has to do is work on stopping that running game first and foremost. Cousins is a guy who can definitely beat you, but he could also beat himself. We saw against Iowa 3 interceptions. So in past games against Penn State, he's had some key interceptions as well. If you let Baker and Bell and that running game go off against you, this game will be over quickly. So I think the key is to force Cousins to beat you with his arm, and you're going to give up some big plays. He's going to make some plays, but he's probably also going to make some mistakes.
Also, this is one of the times this season I think Penn State's had the special teams advantage in almost every game they've played this year. But now between Bates, the punter, who could be a first-teamer, Conroy's missed only 1 field goal this year, and Keyshawn Martin is back in the lineup. Special teams, how does that have to play out?
Well, you know, keep an eye on Alex Butterworth. If he is, in fact, a punter again this week, they're going to have to do a great job. I thought he did really well against Indiana. They're going to have to do a great job against that punt return game because Michigan State definitely can bring some kicks back.
ECM prediction time, and for that, we turn to a very special group of people.
I think it's going to be another high-scoring game for Penn State this Saturday against Michigan State, but in the end, on senior day, they're going to win it 37-31.
I think Evan Royster is going to play hard. He's really one heck of a football player. I think final score, 31-24. Game's over in the third quarter. Penn State wins it.
Penn State, Michigan State. One of the most heated rivalries in all of college football. Nothing gets bigger than this. I predict 24-20 Penn State. Oh my God, this game's huge.
Ready, 3? Take 3.
I don't think Chris is quite emotional enough there. Wow, that's something else. You know, first of all, kudos to everybody for doing a great job all season. They've made us look very good. In terms of this game, Michigan State has not beaten Penn State at Beaver Stadium since Joe Paterno's been head coach. Penn State has not lost a senior day game since some guy named Tom Brady, who was kind of a no-name at Michigan back then, came in 1999 and did it. I think Penn State goes out in style with in the regular season, wins this game 28-21, and sets up for a nice bowl.
Mark, thanks so much as always. We appreciate it. You saw our crew. They're fabulous. At least you saw most of them. I'm Steve Jones. Thanks so much for joining us on Huddle Up, Nittany Lion fans.
Presentation of Huddle Up Nittany Lion fans on your local public television station has been made possible in part by Everett Cash Mutual Insurance Company, insuring restaurants and other commercial businesses since 1913. ECM Insurance Group of Everett.
McClanahan's Penn State Room, offering a complete assortment of Penn State gifts and apparel. Downtown State College or online anytime at PennStateRoom.com.
Inspirations, Milroy, Pennsylvania, featuring Penn State Corian tables and house signs. Information at 717-667-6314.
This has been a production of WPSU.